It's round 10 here at the Masters Tour, live from Las Vegas at the Link Hotel. I'm Apxvoid, and I'm joined by pro player Orange, a member from Grandmasters. I got ink all over my hand. My goodness, man, what's going wrong? How's it going, Orange?
I'm doing great. It's so fun to be out at one of these big events again, like last year with all the tour stops. I had a ton of fun just hanging out with friends and enjoying all the different cities. And now being in Las Vegas, which is, in my opinion, one of the coolest cities there is in the world with everyone, it's a great time.
How has this tournament been for you in comparison to Grandmasters League? Like, what was the preparation difference like and just the field overall?
Oh, the difference has been huge. So when we prepare for Grandmasters, when we play 2 matches a week, then we get to change decks, right? So you prepare very much for your 2 opponents instead of a large field. So when you prepare for a tournament like Master Tour Vegas, you prepare for 250 plus people, which means that you need to have more of an all-around good deck that you bring to the field, and it's also way more important that you make a good metagame call. But it's been very enjoyable. We had a really good practice group for this event that consisted of, we've been practicing together for all of Grandmasters and this event. It's been me, Hunter Ace, Saiyan, Mussy, Fino, and Board Control. So I'm in good hands when it comes to preparation.
And what did you end up bringing to the tournament?
All of us, actually, except Mussy, brought Cyclone Mage to the tournament. And some of us didn't do so well, like me. And then we have Saiyan and Casper and Boar and Fino that are still doing really well.
Muzzy seems to always bring something different.
Yeah, he just didn't feel too comfortable with Mage and felt comfortable taking on people in the Bomb Warrior mirror, which I can't blame him for.
Yeah, I don't blame him for that at all. I would like the Bomb Warrior mirrors, but,
Yeah,
not for everybody. Round number 10 is coming up. We have Apxvoid taking on BloodyfaceCN, the artist formerly known as Zhao Ti from China, who made an appearance at the World Championship. And we're taking a look at Apxvoid's deck list. You were just talking about Cyclone Mage, and y'all brought it, so I'm guessing you can give me a pretty good insight into what's going on here.
Well, if there is one player we really wanted to get in the head of when we prepared our Cyclone Mage, it was Apxvoid. We were jokingly saying in the hotel room that, we should just call up Apex and ask him what the 9th is, and here we got it right in front of us. Cyclone Mage is a deck that has it's a pretty unfair deck. It does really unfair things, which is pretty good for such a long tournament, because when you play 12 rounds of Swiss, then you want to have some free wins from doing really unfair stuff, for example going Giant Conjurer on 4. We see his deck list here. It's pretty standard. The inclusions that are somewhat interesting is the 1 Doomsayer and the 1 Vexcrow. We usually don't see those in Cyclone Mage. That seems to be quite a nod towards Rogue, I would say, or other aggro decks, which is one of Mage's weak spots in the meta. And we see him cutting down on 1 Frostnov and 1 Banana Buffoon, which are 2 pretty core cards if you ask me, but I trust Apex that he knows what he's doing.
Get a little bit weaker against Mage, get stronger against aggro.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
And so for BloodyfaceCN here, pretty darn straightforward. Bomb Warrior, I feel like, is about as close to figure out of a core card deck that we're going to see until this deck just completely changes an archetype. You
see very few tech choices in Bomb Warriors. Do you want the Harrison or not? Are you fine without running weapon removal? Some people doesn't include Snip Snap, which I think is a huge mistake. And then it's how many Omega Assemblies do you want main deck, where you see that the BloodyfaceCN went with 1 Omega Assembly, which I think is totally fair, because they can get quite awkward in multiples together with Devastators.
It's a situational card towards the end game. You already have 2 Omega Devastators in an end game situation like that. I like the Bomb Warrior list right now. I think they're very clean, and to me it's just a very powerful mid-range aggro type of deck. Yeah,
I think that's one of its main strengths, is that people always treat Bomb Warrior as a control deck, I feel like. Or people that haven't played it much are like, oh, we're playing against Dr. Boom, we're gearing up for a slower game, and then the Bomb Warrior opponent goes, oh, coin augmented into Clockwork Goblin, and you just don't have an answer, and then you die very quickly from that. So it's a deck with multiple sort of game plans that plays all sorts of, plays the fast game rather well and plays the slow game really, really well.
And so what kind of game is BloodyfaceCN looking to play in this particular matchup? He's facing off against Apxvoid with a couple of interesting tech choices in there. What's the major game plan overall? What's your ideal situation?
So this is actually quite interesting matchup. I would say that it changes quite a lot between Game 1 and Game 2 and 3. Because in Game 1, the Bomb Warrior doesn't have the answers to all the giants. You can't deal with several giants plus conjurers calling. After a while, you're just going to get run over. So in game 1, you want to be somewhat aggressive. Ethereum Rower doesn't stand out as a card that's great against Mage, but in game 1, it's super important just to get in those early ship damages against the Mage. Same thing, what you're really looking for is the coin augmented Elec, because Mage is really lacking in the removal department when it comes to the early game, at least. So you want those sort of draws game 1, whereas in game 2 and 3 you can slow down when you get bored in more removal, like Super Collider, Big Game Hunter, etc. And
so kind of look at that from APX's side. If Bloodyface, starts off with an aggressive start here, where does he go? The ideal situation is you just get a big thing down, your Conjurer's calling it, but that doesn't look like it's going to end up happening this game.
Well, what you want to do is that eventually you want to drop a Giant and you want to Conjurer's calling it, and it's pretty hard for the warrior to deal with. But one of the cards I'm really looking for when I play this matchup is actually just like Sorcerer's Apprentice on 2. Not because I want to do anything really unfair with it early game, but it contests Ethereum Rower really cleanly, and also if they go Coin Elec, you can ping it together with the Sorcerer's Apprentice, and that way you stave off the early pressure, which is one of the main things you're really looking to do in the early game. For example, another thing we discovered when preparing for GM in this matchup was that a play that we've never really done before, that was super underrated, is coining Banana Buffoon, because that way if they play Elec, you can double Banana your Buffoon, and then you have the initiative on board. Wow. Things like that is what you're looking to do as the Mage in the early game, and then you kind of do the Giant Conjurer as a secondary plan.
So fight fire with fire.
Yeah, pretty much. It's all who can get the pressure going and snowball it. So we see the warrior with a pretty good start. Bloodyface doesn't have the Elec or the Clockwork Goblin, of course. But still, after the double 1-drop draw, and Apxvoid didn't have the Sorcerer's Apprentice on 2. So
it's the exact same thing that happened to Gallon when he came to Grandmasters. He would just start saying things about draws and how it wasn't there. He'd just immediately show up. As soon as you step on the caster desk, this happens.
That's my superpower now?
It's everyone who plays Hearthstone's superpower. As soon as you step onto a big desk, you say some smart-sounding stuff, and then you get to, but they're missing this one particular card. That one particular card typically shows up.
Admirable, have you found any way that I can transfer this skill and bring it to me when I'm playing matches myself? Because that would be really useful.
If you create a format where you both play and cast at the exact same time, that might work.
I think we might be onto something here, actually. So
in the tank here, though, I mean, I feel like Wrench Caliber is one of the strongest tools that you have against minions. And then furthermore, especially once they played Banana Buffoon, because bananas are going to get loaded up on stuff.
Yeah, I think Wrench Caliber looks really clean here. Apxvoid is going to have cards in hand for... No, he won't be able to cast Giant next turn, but you're still wary of like Evocation Giant, which if Evocation Giant was something that wasn't beatable, if you played Caliber here, I wouldn't go for it, but he has the Militia Commander in hand as well, so it's totally fine to do this. And this is just what I'm talking about. Just these Ethereum Rover and this Town Crier, just watch how the game progresses and how much ship damage these are going to get in. When you take that plus the bomb damage that's coming later in the game, it really adds up very, very quickly.
You have to protect your life total.
Yes. So, magic trick here. Could have played Luna, but obviously not that strong right into the Wrench Caliber.
We have a small tech issue right now where our feed has actually frozen, so we apologize for that. We can hear that a secret is played, so we're coming back on camera real quick so we get this figured out. We apologize for that. Technology and esports, that's like a thing that goes hand in hand. So sometimes the technology is gonna have a bit of a stall. So thank you for your patience, and we're kind of be rolling through that. So kind of what it sounds like to me is overall Bomb Warrior has to be the aggressor in that matchup for fear of how powerful of turns that APX and the Mage can have.
At least game 1. If you're not stacking up the bombs in the early game and you just let the Mage do whatever they want, that usually spells defeat for you. But another reason why the bombs are so important in the early game together with the ship damage is Blastmaster Boom.
Yeah.
Mage doesn't have... It lacks removal overall. Mage acts on the principle that if I do bigger things than you, then my removal isn't going to be necessary.
Yeah. So
but there are some things that really goes over the top, like Blastmaster.
Again, I want to apologize. The players are not experiencing a technical issue. It is our feed that is experiencing a technical issue. They are still in game and they are still progressing through this. So we're going to work our best to do it. I wonder if can we get the jib shot like over someone's shoulder and take a peek? That'd be pretty cool.
I mean, it will be a fun surprise to get thrown right into a game a few turns down the line and see how it progressed.
TJ and I twice, and when we swapped over to the traveling championships, we went to Shanghai, went to Bahamas those year. Both times that we experienced an issue where we had to use a camera that was set up to capture player reactions, we had some sort of issue where we were then having to capture the feed with those cameras so that we could talk about the game. TJ and I, both times. I kid you not.
Well, some people just get in unfortunate situations, what can I say? But it sounds very fun, though. I gotta admit. Well, I would say looking at the early game, from both of these players, I would say that BloodyfaceCN is at quite advantage. He had all the early tools to stave off well, he had all the tools to keep getting in for that chip damage, I should say, rather. Whereas Apxvoid's hand was kind of empty out of gas. Everything could have changed over these couple of turns.
I'm kind of gauging by the bodily reactions here. I just saw APX shake his head.
Yeah.
And I imagine that probably is a snowball effect. I mean, the hand from BloodyfaceCN had Militia Commander in it. He had Dynomatic. He had Dr. Boom, Mad Genius. And he had Board with a wrench caliber setup. That is the makings of a play where APX is just never sticking anything without a giant turn happening.
Pretty much the ideal thing you want. And you also saw Apex. It happens very rarely for the mage, but it happens from time to time that you don't draw either Mountain Giant or Mana Cyclone, which are your two absolute most key cards.
And Mana Cyclone picked up here with the freeze.
Yeah.
And is that a pair of Scorches?
That is 2 Scorches, which...
Ooh.
With those 2 Clockwork Goblins frozen on this turn, then we get to kill them off next turn and get back Tempo that way, which is great. But you also see a cute interaction there, which is that the bomb was drawn first, and if you draw the bomb and then you draw a spell after that, you actually don't discard it, even if it's from Book of Spectres, because the bomb spell says that you draw the card afterwards. It's weird and not super intuitive, but that magic trick is for sure supposed to be in the hand.
Important facet. How to turn a bomb into a liability.
Yep. Well, I don't think that Bloodyface is very sad about that, getting Apxvoid down to 15. You see, there's a second caliber in hand. It's that Dr. Boom, as you said, gives him
That's a lot of damage.
The end game yeah, he locks him up for the end game at least. So
you're thinking of Devastators and Rush?
Yeah. Well, anything that scales you from from around turn 7 to turn 10 is super important in Bomb Warrior, because when you play cards like Omega Assembly and Omega Devastator, we had it as one of our notes in our playtesting group that in the turns you really want to pressure the warrior with really big threats, it's between 7 and 9. Because during those turns, that's when the Bomb Warriors usually has run out of resources to deal with your things, and it's before Omega Devastator comes online. So these are the important turns for APX to make something happen. For example, if it gets really desperate, I could see Archmage Antonidas come down next turn, because there really aren't many efficient ways for Bloodyface to clear that then.
Makes sense to me.
And absolutely ideal for Bloodyface would be if he could pick up Blastmaster Boom, but I think he's kind of set here with Mad Genius.
Just remember, if you want to see that draw, you have to say it right as or right before it's happening.
Ah, right.
It's tough to just draw a card because you feel like it.
I still need to practice these powers that I've just acquired.
Hey, just like you explained the Warrior, turn 7 to turn 9, those are the key turns. Timing is everything.
Absolutely, it's one of the biggest things in Hearthstone. It's not, you just don't only play your cards. You need to pinpoint when your opponent's weak turns are and think of it from your opponent's perspective as much as you think of from your perspective. One of the things that some Grandmaster players do and find great success with is that they actually practice versus themselves these days. For example, Boar Control is a big fan of this. He just logs into 2 accounts. He has Boar Control, his regular account, and Boar Control 4. Boar Control and Boar Control 4 just play games versus each other for every GM match. And that way, Boar gets tons of practice from both perspectives and learns all of these awkward turns and weak spots and when he should go for things.
You're feeling both sides of the game.
Yeah, it's really, it doesn't work for everyone because you need to have a very deep understanding from the matchup from the beginning. But
well, things just went south real quick.
You look away for 1 second.
My goodness. And APX, I mean, he just kind of shrugs it off like, wow, what can you do? Honestly, that may have been a foregone conclusion in that game, but it just happened so suddenly.
I feel kind of bad. I was talking because usually it's so unlikely that something like that happens. So I thought that this game would still go on for a very long time. The odds of that happening must be 1 in like thousands.
I mean, there were 3 bombs in the deck at that point?
That's
2
crazy.
bombs, maybe?
That's absolutely crazy.
I mean, we missed a little bit of the game there, but it's 2 Wrench Caliber swings and 2 Clockwork Goblins. We'd already seen one of the bombs drawn. So there were 3 bombs in the deck with, what was it, 16 cards?
Yeah.
So 3 out of 16 into 2 out of 15.
You do the math. I'm not very good at this sort of stuff.
We'll call it 5 on the 3 out of 16. It's a little bit less than that. 5 to 1, or 1 in 5, and then 1 in 7.5. So 5 times 7.5 is the math there. So 37.5. So 1 in every 37.5 turns that he takes there, he draws 2 consecutive bombs.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the difference between you and me. You do that math, and I just go away thinking that I was really, really unlucky.
It's still pretty darn unlucky.
Yeah, absolutely.
Less than 3%.
But it happens sometimes. For what it's worth, I think that the BloodyfaceCN had a great control over that game to begin with, and I don't think the outcome would have been any different.
And you can take a look at your screen. Apxvoid is moving on to the secondary deck, and you can quite clearly see why. That is some much-needed pressure that he can have in that one, and that was the one thing that he absolutely was missing in that game.
Yeah, you get to sideboard out some of the dead cards like Frost Nova and Doomsayer for more pressure in the Astromancer and Cairn. This actually plays really nice for the Mage because you know that the Warrior is gonna bring in even more removal post-board. That is if BloodyfaceCN has a side deck with Super Colliders and Big Game Hunters. Some of the Bomb Warriors are going with EMP Operative and Spellbreaker because they think there's going to be more mech decks.
Yeah.
Not entirely sure. Looks like BloodyfaceCN has EMP Operative and Spellbreaker sideboard, which puts him at a huge disadvantage in games 2 and 3 because now, I said it for game 1, that Warrior had trouble dealing with all of Mage's threats. That is nothing compared to how it looks game 2 and 3 when Mage gets to pack Cairn and Astromancer. It gets pretty crazy. So now even more, since BloodyfaceCN doesn't have the sideboard for Mage, it's even more about mulliganing for that early curve that got him there in game 1, and he wants to do the exact same thing in game 2 because you can't get there in a long game.
And so I guess talking about that, you know, we have spoken at length on broadcast about the importance of coin in Mage. What's it like for Warrior in that aspect? Is it just more troubling that APX is going to have coins and thus extra gas in this game, or is it more about he's seeing less cards and thus hitting the curve less often?
It's very funny with Warrior, actually, because most of the time you don't mind too much if you're on coin or not, but in this particular matchup, when coin Augmented Relic into Clockwork Goblin is such a strong draw, you actually really, really want coin. Not only do you get to take it away from Mage, that works a lot better when it's on coin, but it works better for your ideal curve out. For example, Ethereum Rower into Armor Up, into Augmented Relic, and then Clockwork Goblin on 4. It's not even close as powerful as...
I feel like this is just every matchup. It's like we're in an actual coin meta.
Yeah, I think you could say so. There are a lot of decks. Even Hunter, like Midrange Hunter, is a deck that loves to go Vicious Scale Height, Coin, Dire Frenzy, and that's probably the deck that's where coin matters the least. So,
look, I'm thinking back to like a year ago. When I looked at my stats at the end of like a season where I would have to play a lot, like there was a new metagame development or I had champs coming up, and I needed to know my stuff. Like I would look at my numbers and be like, man, I am awful with coin. I was like, across the board, I think if you take into account all my classes, I was about 48.5% on coin, and I was about 54.5% without coin. Yeah. Now, I've just always been a very aggressive player. I think Attacker's Initiative just works better for me. And to me, that actually spells a lot of what I would call trouble that I've had with everything, pretty much except Bomb Warrior in this particular metagame, I like to play decks that have Attacker's Initiative, and right now, the coin is more important than that.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. The stats of the coin might look like a pretty innocent card, but how to utilize the card and how to make the best use of it can be the difference between winning and losing a high-level game.
Understanding.
For sure. So
yeah, I'm a little bit worried for Bloodyface in this one. A good hand, I think, individually, but there's not really much going on outside of Wrench Caliber into Blastmaster Boom here.
I would actually not be too concerned, because whereas we missed our very important free drop, the curve of double just go Wrench Caliber next turn into attack and play another one. If I recall correctly, we don't saw any Harrison from APX secondary deck.
Yep.
So the Wrench Caliber is safe, and I talked about it a little bit earlier, but Blastmaster Boom can absolutely just close out a game, especially if you already get in 12 points of damage with your Wrench Calibers.
Yeah, so kind of talking about that, you know, what's the fear and the timing of that for BloodyfaceCN? Is this a hand that's just not going to afford him a Liberty, or is stuff like Sea Giant really a big concern?
Sea Giant is not too much of a problem because it comes down after Blastmaster Boom, which is at that point you can probably just you can brawl it away or anything like that. But Mountain Giant here would be very scary, and I think that's why we see the Omega Devastator now from BloodyfaceCN, a super smart play just so he can set up and kill the Mountain Giant if it were to come down.
You know, you can't build tension against it in this spot, so you want to have a way to check it.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, and not only that, but Wrench Caliber is 2 hits of free damage a piece, whereas Omega Devastator can be a 4-mana investment for several 4 points of damage.
The good old Ike theory. You play it so it's in play.
Absolutely. I don't subscribe to that theory as much as some other people do, but it definitely has its spots where it's very relevant.
Well, if you play it so it's in play, you could then attack so that things have less life.
Yeah.
More is more.
I've heard that a lot of times. I've heard it a lot of times. But
Mirror image with the Mountain Giant, though. I feel like this is the counterplay that APX has afforded. You know, I'm thinking Ray of Frost would have been pretty excellent in this situation as well.
Yeah. This is great for Apex if this Mountain Giant sticks, which I think it always does. I don't think there's any way for Bloodyface to clear this, actually.
It'd be Shield Block, Shield Slam, or double Ward Path, Shield Slam.
Yeah. Well, I was talking from the context of his hand. But yeah, well, there are ways in his deck to deal with it, but luckily for Apxvoid, they aren't available. Yeah. And as you said, they're pretty specific as well.
I always like to put myself in the player's position who is the one who would be checked in that scenario and just like kind of think about all the things that they're thinking about to get perspective.
Yeah.
So APX looks at that spot and he goes, man, double Warpath and Shield Slam, like it's such a bad turn. Like that is legitimately a pretty bad turn for Bloodyface, I think, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, you're not happy to do that. Warpath would be a card that can be utilized later. But what Apxvoid really sets up to do here is that he wants to Kagler Conjurer next turn. It was actually Fino that when he started playing this deck that he said, I just feel like I'm winning games so much more than everyone else because as mage, I just play my stuff. For example, people might look at this Kagler Conjurers and think like, oh, but what if BloodyfaceCN has Brawl? But what you do is, as you said, you're just the one to make him have it.
Yeah.
Like,
Bloodyface brawls in a situation, there's a chance he loses 3 of his own minions.
Yeah.
If you brawl in the situation, there's a chance 12-drop lives and you have a Conjurer's Calling in your hand.
Yeah, you would be very happy about that. And, well, and sometimes this happens. There just wasn't the answer for the Giant. There just isn't a Brawl, and that's one of the ways you beat double Wrench Caliber into Blastmaster Boom. You just never let him play any of the cards.
Gotta make him have it.
Yep.
That's my favorite style, is I go, well, you know, if they got it, they got it. Yep. And I just plop my stuff down. Now, that's a good learning experience for me as well, because I often find myself in that situation and I go, you know, I actually did have the cards to kind of beat this even if they did have it. But now I know that. I'll take that into account in future games. Here at the Masters Tour in round number 10, probably not the spot to learn that situation. And so for Apxvoid, I think it's a context of both his hand strength. He's able to cleanly recover from Brawl. And then also B, they have to have Brawl or they're not going to win.
Yeah, well, one of the things, even if Brawl was here, I think that Apxvoid, you can see him sitting up in his chair, he's just waiting for it to happen, and he's going to be very happy when it does come down. But I think he's just looking at his hand, and, well, if Brawl comes down, then I can just coin Archmage Antonidas without playing another spell.
This is part of having a good deck. You have to have a deck that can just beat opponents when they fail the threat check. And
you see here, Apex leans down again the second he sees the Tyrion Rower attack, because that probably means that there's no Brawl coming down.
In fact, if Bloodyface had made that attack and then brawled, and you know, I would have had a little bit of a question mark above my head going, what on earth is the point of that? You just took away percent to win the brawl. So when you see that attack for Apxvoid, that's, oh my gosh, they don't have brawl.
So now the question is, the game isn't entirely over. We can see that there's very few things that Bloodyface can do, but Apxvoid doesn't you have a read of what the Bloodyface's hand is right now, but you don't know entirely. So you need to make sure, how do I close out this game without committing resources that I can still come back even if you were to top deck the answer.
You're susceptible to a top deck.
Yeah, while still pushing for a large amount of damage. For example, I think that it's somewhat debatable if you should trade a giant or not, or if you should just go face to always set up lethal, but this should do the trick.
I'm pretty surprised by the Conjurer's calling here in general. Like, I feel like there's enough pressure on board, it just goes full steam ahead, and then if Bloodyface top decks a Brawl here, you're able to reload with that Conjurer's calling. Like, in my head, I'm more apt to use Ziliax to push or coin out RPG Antonitis, but I think it's all a foregone conclusion because Bloodyface has to draw Brawl, and he did.
Yeah, I think I agree with what Apxvoid did there. He didn't have many other great targets for the Conjurer's calling, and he just wanted to make entirely sure that there were no like taunts or anything that prevented him from striking lethal on the next turn.
It's closed in the face. More time. It's closed in the face of disruption to give an extra turn for the draw, rather than be able to play around the draw. That is the magnificent one for Bloodyface. Yeah. Interesting perspective, because honestly, every pro player I talk to seems to have a different opinion about it, and they all can explain things that convince me back to one side or the other every single time. And right here, you're bringing me back to the just play the stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I learned it from the best. I learned it from Fino. That I was very much in the camp of when I started playing decks, I weren't playing my magic tricks because saving them for Cyclone. Things like that, I was holding back a lot, and I was like, oh, they could have the answer for this. I should wait. And the more I played together with other people, they're just like, just play your things. Like, your things are so powerful, and you have so many of them. Like, they are gonna run out of answers.
Spend your mana.
Yeah, spend your mana.
I haven't felt that's one of my best learning experiences, too, is just I start out spending as many cards as I can, and then as I lose games because I overspent, I realize, oh, that's the one thing I didn't need to do, and that's where the game changes.
That's a very smart way. It's what the theory of Soleil purple, the player thinks that they in play, push face so they take more damage. It's a very, very good rule of thumb if you want to become better at the game quickly, because by doing things, then you also learn the mistakes. Like, if you weren't supposed to do something and get punished for it, and you're like, oh, cool, I probably won't do that next time.
I like when pro players say things, and then I get to make one really cliche statement to wrap it up, which is you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet.
Well played.
Yeah. Then we go to game.
Yeah. And we see game 2 was a lot harder for Bloodyface there, but now he's on coin. I'm very interested to see how he decides to mulligan with his Dr. Boom Mad Genius and Ethereum Rower. I'm actually not sure what I would do myself with this mulligan, because there are so many factors to play in what different kind of game you want to go for.
Okay, I'm going to offer you what I would do, and then I'm going to have you offer your thoughts afterwards.
All right.
I'd keep Eternium Rover.
And you would throw away Dr. Boom Mad Genius?
I would throw away the other 3, because what I'm looking for is exactly bomb stuff to support that. I'm looking for Town Criers to fetch Militia Commanders so that the board presence I have in play can check an early Giant, and at the same time can also start delivering damage.
Yeah, I'm having one of these spots where I'm kind of conflicted in what I would do. My head tells me to throw away the Dr. Boom Mad Genius and keep the Ethereum Rower, but I'm not that comfortable with the deck yet that I feel good about making such a call. But I'm happy to see that BloodyfaceCN did that himself and gets rewarded here with the coin augmented relic, as we talked about for the past 2 games in depth, and now we're actually going to see it in action.
You know, something to talk about too is just BloodyfaceCN, again, formerly known as Zhao T, and he competed at the World Championships. Going into that tournament, you know, we were asking players who they thought the best player was in the world. And we got 3 different answers from 3 different regions, where if you asked the Americas players, they often would say it was Hunter Ace, or sometimes just Sand. But Hunter Ace was a very common one. If you asked the players in Europe, players like Bunny Hopper were saying, oh, it's Zhao T. I actually practiced with Zhao T for World Championships. Yes. And then you go over to China and you ask them, and Bloodyface was a very common answer at the time, who I think was in his, you know, pretty much peak technical form. I think he played impeccably all throughout last year. He may tell you different about the World Championships and a bit lately, but to me that speaks more to his understanding and his experience and the knowledge that he has stuff to learn. But you know, Zhao T changed his name over to BloodyfaceCN. Like, this is hilarious to me when I look at it.
It's really funny.
And I think about this position because the one thing that all three of those players had in common was the ability to make bold calls early and be aggressive when it called for it.
Yeah, and you can only make those calls if you have a really deep understanding of the game, which we see all of these do. So this is interesting for Bloodyface. He can coin the Alec, which is absolutely what you want to do, but you don't have the follow-up for it. If Apxvoid were to play something, but what would that even be on turn 3? You can shield slam, but most likely is that you're going to be without a play next turn. But we see him still just play the Alec without follow-up. I like it a lot. This Alec is probably going to connect for a lot of damage.
It also just plays into your ideal situations. Like if you hit Jin here and you draw a second Alec or you draw a Clockwork Goblin, that is a massive turn you had from using coin instead.
I would go as far as to say that it's probably just game over at that point for Apxvoid. And taking those risks when you're this unfavored post-board rather, as BloodyfaceCN, I think you absolutely do those calls, and I would coin that Alec as well, even though you see him
fail to have a play.
Yeah, using the word punished is a little bit harsh, but you see him not getting rewarded for it.
Yeah. I'm actually going to take this time, because the turn is slow, to explain what I believe punish is. I don't think punish is for a mistake. I believe punish is for a decision.
Okay. Could you elaborate a little bit more?
So, like, you make a strong play. Like, let's say you're playing Token Druid, and you Whispering Woods, and your opponent used Magic Trick early, and they had Arcane Explosion.
Oh, yeah, we saw that.
You're supposed to play Whispering Woods, but you got punished for it.
Yep.
You made the right play, and your opponent had a punish. They did something that turned your good play into an extraordinarily bad one.
Yeah.
And here, for me, it's Bloodyface took a risk, and it didn't pay off. I don't think this is a punish.
No, you're absolutely right. So, Apxvoid, no other place but to drop the Sandbinder on 4, gets the Giant, which is guaranteed since it has both Cyclones in hand, and you see Bloodyface just keep stacking up the pressure. Everything is going his way, except that there's no bombs in the deck and you're holding Blastmaster Boom. But I would still take the position of Bloodyface here, even though there are no bomb cards drawn yet.
1 mana off of being able to shield block, armor up, shield slam.
I think this Ethereum rower has done its work, and that you're very happy with the work it put in this game, and you can sacrifice for the greater good to get to shield slam that Giant. You still push 5. 16. If you get 1 more point of damage, then Apxvoid is just 3 bump hits away from dying. And the important thing to note too, that we didn't touch on, is that Mage doesn't really have heal. It has Ciliax, and that's pretty much it. It's very hard to magnetize Ciliax onto something in the Mage deck as well. So your bomb damage is actually very, very reliable in this matchup. I'm
kind of cooking up some different ideas in my head here too, because if Bloodyface uses shield block, shield slam, you get to keep pressure on board, but you lose Eternium Rover. But at the same time, I'm looking at ways to develop Omega Devastator, and I just feel like they're not as clean overall. Like I was looking at trading the Alec Eternium Rover Shield Slam and play the 4/5 instead, but those 2 draws are massive.
Yeah, the Town Crier is big, and I actually think the Ciliax draws make it so I would personally have probably traded in the Militia Commander here instead of the Ethereum Rower. It's a 1 damage difference, but you get the upside of getting to magnetize Ciliax onto the Ethereum Rower next turn for an additional 3 damage. But I don't fault him for this decision either.
Oh boy.
Yeah, here we go. Now Bloodyface is sitting without an answer for the Giant, but he still has the board, pretty easy to deal with, can still push for damage.
Technical answer? It just costs you a lot. Like the whole turn and you don't have any board left.
Oh.
And I don't want to do that.
Yeah, no, I didn't even think of that, because that's how unlikely I am to go for something like that. I think you can... If you had this backed up by bombs, if there were 2 or 3 bombs laying around in Apxvoid deck right now, I would be looking way more at the Warpath and just try to stall until the bombs explode and Blastmaster Boom hits. But with how it looks, Bloodyface is gonna need to get this damage in through minions, so I would be much more... I would much rather go for Ciliax and push for 4 damage phase. And then if Apxvoid has the Conjurer's Calling, that you have no idea if he has it yet, his plays has been somewhat consistent throughout the game, then you would need to top deck Brawl. But you could also, if Apxvoid decides to go for double Conjurer's Calling this turn, you're still gonna have, 9 power on board.
Double Conjurers also doesn't push through Ciliax.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is a really good play.
Oh!
Ooh.
Mirror images, they're just extra life.
It's big, but BloodyfaceCN's board is somewhat resilient to his own warpath, so that is a way to push through even more. But then we're really getting to the spot where our board damage is like starting to dwindle down, and we really need to start drawing some bomb cards. You even see two of the really good 10 drops pop out from the Conjurer's Calling.
Oh, bomb card. Alec is still in play as well. And BloodyfaceCN does have a push potential here with just adding Omega Devastator.
You can, another potential line of play is to use, you drew a bomb card, you have Blastmaster Boom, you could double Warpath, play Clockwork Goblin, put Apxvoid down to 7. The problem is that you're on a two-turn clock as well from the Deathwing and the Jumbo Imp. So you're not going to have time to play Blastmaster Boom if you go for that line, but you may have to rely on top-decking a Brawl at this point.
Also, just if Bloodyface goes wide on board, what that means is Apxvoid, if it doesn't have a freeze, he has to pay attention to that board in some capacity because he's just going to be looking at bombs in the deck plus a lot of damage on board.
I actually think that Apex boarded out most of his freezes. I think there's only Ray of Frost left in his deck that freezes the board. So
going in.
So him having a freeze is like not an unreasonable thing to bet on. I like this. I think I would have went for the exact same line. Hoping to draw your one-off Brawl, I think. No, you have 2 Brawls in the deck, actually. So you have a 2 out there here, and if you can follow up Brawl with Blastmaster Boom, you're probably taking the game.
I'm trying to think of other things, too, like Wrench Caliber is a draw that's very real here. Counter Spell picked up for APX.
Oh, that's huge.
That shuts off the Brawl with the current context.
But yeah, looking at... Oh, interesting here. He's not going to go for Conjurers. Instead, he opts for Mana Cyclone for only 2 spells, and he has to go for the trades.
Well, you don't want to die to a single bomb. I think that's the thought here.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the things that Bloodyface's play does, that it puts Apxvoid in an awkward position himself.
And that means it's not a 2-turn lethal, which means that Blastmaster Boom comes down, which means Apxvoid is going to be at risk again.
Yes, what Bloodyface is very scared of is that he were to play this Blastmaster Boom and the secret is Mirror Entity, he's dead on the swing back.
Oh, you can't play around that.
I don't think you can. I think you just gotta take it. I'm in a very bad position here, and I need to take a risk. If it isn't Mirror Entity, then I think all of a sudden he's in a pretty good spot. You're 1 bomb away, and just like boom, but for 2 damage.
I'll tell you what, though, you can look down and see the reaction, and they know that the bluff is potential, but you can't afford it. You have to go in.
Being in the Twitch chat right now, seeing this, you're like, of course you just slam this Blastmaster Boom. But when you're at 7-2, you have 2 rounds left of Swiss, 3 rounds maybe, and you are in contention for top 8. This is a very, very tough call to make, I can say from experience. But this is what really differences the great from the good players, is that the great players take these risks.
If you Conjurers into Mechathune with the Ziliax in hand,
yeah, it's Mechathune and it's Boom Reaver. There are 2 mechs that are 10 mana, and if you hit one,
that's not the one. That's like the worst.
That's really, really bad. It's really bad for Apex, and you see him shaking his head, being very upset about that, and understandably so. That was... How many 10 drops are there? There's Norsari, Caligos, not Mulch Muncher anymore, Deathwing, Jumbo Imp, and then there's Boom Reaver, Mechathune.
Hakar.
So, Hakar. So it's
Sea Giant.
Sea Giant. Okay, I missed a few. So it's a 2 in 8.
Big Bad Archmage.
Okay, well,
that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of weird stuff.
Yeah,
it's like this is the stuff that I need to weirdly focus on that at times. You know, like. You got to build a chart out if you're going to know that in the spot. And, I mean, you've sat in this seat multiple times. Like, you've been in that hot seat and had to make tough calls. And I totally agree with you. I think for Bloodyface that last turn, he's looking desperately for any other situation.
Oh, this is important. This is big. Where are the boom bots going to go? There's another Conjure Spell.
Oh, my gosh. And so now, for Bloodyface, it is literally going to boil down to 2 damage is getting pushed to face to ensure that a bomb hit is lethal. So that tells me can you get better than that? And the Dr. Boom Mad Genius absolutely could provide that with a laser. It could just actually be 9 mana, 3 damage.
Yeah, laser is straight up lethal. From our perspective, Bloodyface doesn't know that secret can still be Ice Barrier and Vaporize.
So you want to check that in the right order.
Well, do you? If you get Sap Cannon here, I think you start with Dr. Boom. If you get Sap Cannon, it goes face, and then you attack face and see what happens. But
not Sap Cannon. So now, what are the odds that the Boombots deliver lethal pressure versus the Boombots chipping away? Because the decision point now is you push the first Boombot there, you see what happens. You didn't get the result you wanted, so you know that 2 minions need to go face unless a Boombot hits face for a lot.
Yeah, so one Boombot sacrificed into one of the minions here.
It goes face. So now, the decision point is just, there's nothing left.
Yeah,
it's just a bomb hit.
You just pause.
And look at APX. Oh. It's down to this specific draw.
Oh, my idea.
Fades it.
This is Hearthstone at its best. I think that both of these players played this game really well. I think Bloodyface did everything he could. He threw away Dr. Boom Mad Genius in the mulligan. He decided to coin Elec with no follow-up. He decided just to push a lot of face damage. I think this is beautifully played from both sides. Apx played his threats. He checked the answers, and he made a really good balance of pushing damage to face while still managing BloodyfaceCN's board. Really well played by both players, I think.
Bold calls the right time. And I think when you're against an opponent that you're going to respect, or against an opponent even just this deep in the field at 7-2, you're going to have to respect how they play to some degree. And that means taking the right risks at the right time.
Absolutely. I know that both Apx and BloodyfaceCN is someone that look up to other players a lot. So these players were absolutely giving their opponents a ton of credit and looked into a lot of their plays to see if they can make any reads just from knowing that they know what they're doing themselves. You know,
it's a whole mind reading situation.
Yeah, it can get really messy at times.
Apxvoid moves up to a match score of 8-2 by defeating BloodyfaceCN, formerly known as Zhao T, by a score of 2-1, and that's going to wrap it up for us here. Orange, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure here, but we got to go to a break. Any final words?
No, it's super enjoyable to be here, and even if the tournament didn't go my way, like getting on desk and get the cost, it's really fun.
Hey, there's always Seoul.
Absolutely, I'll be there.
Qualifier's still going on for that one. Make sure you check it out. But for now, we got to go to a break. When we come back, we're going to be wrapping up round 10 coverage and heading on to find out our top 8 of the Masters Tour here in Las Vegas.